Welcome to the inaugural episode of Hammy Down Gaming. So, what is this show? This is me exploring and taking a trip down memory lane. This isn't a review show or a deep analytical dive into the history of games or anything like that. There's already a bunch of guys doing that. I also don't think we need another guy telling us how great the classics are or why specific properties are awful, and here's why. I'm offering a more personal touch. Maybe you can call it a retrospective, but it's my stream of consciousness. This is a trip through my brain. My first memory of Psychonauts harkens back to when G4 was still a cable TV channel. It was a luxury I could only enjoy visiting relatives during the summer. Most of my experience when it came to games at the time was secondhand, either through friends, magazines like Game Informer, or watching coverage from shows like X-Play and Cheat. In fact, my earliest memory of Psychonauts is watching what I now know is a rerun of a Cheat episode. As a kid on summer vacation at my grandparents' house, having experienced many summer camps, this game immediately captured my attention. It had everything I could want in a video game: extraordinary superpowers, a weird and charmingly gross art style, and most importantly, a hero with goggles. I blame that goggles thing on my budding obsession with anime. The Cheat episode unraveled the whole mystery of Whispering Rock for me: collectibles, secrets, and most importantly, cheat codes. I should mention that while making this video, I went back and watched the Cheat episode in question, and it totally spoils the game. I mean the whole plot, not just the secrets and stuff. I was ready to head off on my psychic summer adventure and do mental gymnastics, but there was only one problem. I didn't own a console. Well, nothing that could play this awesome new game anyway. I had a GameCube and Beautiful Joe, but that's a different video. So, what are young Stella's options in the humid summer of 2005? I could beg my grandparents to buy me the game, or I could search the rental store on Friday movie night. I figure option 2 would be my best bet, play it cool while I browse Hollywood Video. Plus, I just thought it would be easier to have them spend an extra $10 renting a game with a bunch of movies and $60 on it at the mall or something. So the search began, and I came up empty every time until I returned to my own house for the start of the school year, but I never forgot that game. Well, I did until a year later when my GameCube broke and I asked my sweet old grandma to take me to Rhino Games. Before GameStop brought them out. I turned in a decent collection of GameCube games for a grand total of $20. Getting ripped off this day was of no consequence because on this shelf was a single copy of Psychonauts and I had an old Xbox that hadn't Red Ring yet. So, after coming out of pocket another $10, shout out to Grandma, I finally had what I had longed for. My holy grail, my white whale, my psychic summer adventure. I was finally going to be...
a Psychonaut? My name
Starts with a D.
is Rasputin.
Right from the beginning, we learned that Raz was running away from home to join the Psychonauts. The important thing isn't being part of some secret international organization. The important part is finding a community of people like himself, psychics, who understand him. He even quotes the pamphlet's most relevant part. You were born with a special gift, but the people around you treat it like a curse. Your mother is afraid of you, and your father looks at you with shame in his eyes. Back home, your powers make you a loner, an outcast, a circus freak. But in this dojo, in this psychic dojo, they make you a hero.
That is what I wrote on the front of the pamphlet.
I can see how that would speak to me as a young kid. I was very different, the main difference at the time being that I was not attending a local middle school. I went across town to an art school. This, coupled with my more quiet and reserved nature and my penchant for reading books, also being seen as more intelligent than I was sometimes, caused a rift between myself and my family. At my most vulnerable and tumultuous time, I'm seeking acceptance as I change and figure out who I am. At home with those I should feel the closest to and garner the most support, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling the love. So I too ran. I ran to relatives' houses on the weekend. I ran to school, retreating to the safety of the group of friends I had curated. I ran to any place I felt safe and could be myself, whoever or whatever that was going to be. Acceptance without all the bullshit jokes or side comments. I ran away much like Raz did. I would run away multiple times as I grew up and fought for what I perceived to be my freedom of expression. I was fighting to show the world and my family the real me. So in that, I feel like I had to prove myself in some way. All that running and me being different had to amount to something. I had to be me. Raz had to be a Psychonaut. We had no choice as failure results in not only being mocked as foolish for running away, but being suppressed again, not free to express ourselves. What we hope they find when they come for us is not the boy that ran away, but the man standing tall. Or in Raz's case,
What they don't expect is Raz, the Psychonaut.
Big day tomorrow. I want to see each and every one of you runts in my classroom at 0600 hours on the dot. I'm the early bird, and you're the worms. Got it? Now, lights out!
so much of my connection with this level comes from my modern life having served in the military. But don't worry, there's something for Kid Me too. Going through the level, we see that though this heavy military and war imagery exists, there isn't a clear distinction between which branch should be represented. I think this is important because this is a huge red flag if you know anyone in the American military or have served yourself. Each branch and the people in them have distinct identities, so much so their whole meme community is based around the branches poking fun at the stereotypes. This hit me because Oleander has this tough guy military persona. The only vault accessible at the time of first running through the level shows him doing something heroic in almost every branch, then capping it all off by administering first aid and being a decorated leader of men. Upon revisiting, we find out what may be evident to many adults, that he is a fraud and his whole persona is fabricated. It's based on what he thinks the military is and does, or at least what he wishes his life had been. This I find hilarious because I meet guys like this all the time, before and after joining the military. It's a guy that didn't join but swears he could have had a rock solved in a matter of weeks. This pretender's typical line is, "No way I can go to basic training, bro. If some guy were yelling at me, I'd drop him, bro." Not to mention that most jobs in the military are non-combat and closer to administrative desk work in support of the guys actually doing the shooting. So these guys live out this sad fantasy of serving by buying gear at military surplus stores, stuffing their unfortunate shaped buys at old equipment, and showing up at your local protests. Let me be clear, I don't care about false service, stolen valor, or anything else. I care that these goofs choose to build their entire personalities on a lie. We laugh at people like Oleander because we know they only have the movies and the stories of their friends to tell around campfires. Now, lived experience doesn't always give you the whole when it comes to insight and understanding, but it sure does count for a lot. Now, I mentioned a second vault showing what really happened with Oleander. Well, this vault is hidden behind a mental cobweb. Again, I'm not here to analyze anything, but he's hiding his true self, and I was definitely doing that as a kid. For the longest time, I had and even rejected my culture to project a different face to the people I wanted to be accepted by, in my desperate bid for love and affection from a world that knew nothing of me. I was really rejecting myself. I believe people can pick up on that. It's a turnoff where you can tell someone is trying so hard to be something they are not. I was fortunate enough to break out of such a thing before the end of high school and live as my authentic self in front of whoever, and damn if they didn't like it. I wasn't obnoxious about it or anything. Still, when I played Mad Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, I didn't hide that part of myself from anyone. I probably gained more acceptance and genuine friendship living my life that way. To younger me, I just want to say that the love and acceptance we were searching for all those years ago was inside all along. Once we could love and accept ourselves and be comfortable in our own skin, everyone else was able to do the same.
One arrowhead.
With the whole camp open to us after basic branding, I figured we'd talk about the actual game and what I enjoyed before jumping into the next heavy topic. This art style is timeless to me. Almost 20 years later and it pretty much holds up. It's one of the reasons I wish there wasn't this massive push in gaming over the last decade to make things look more realistic. The super realistic stuff tends to age faster and much worse as the technology keeps improving so rapidly. As a wise farmer once said, think of the most realistic game you know of today. It looks amazing, right? Well, guess what, graphics snobs? That game you think looks so great now, I guarantee is going to look lame next to what you can play on your holodeck. That sentiment is one I tend to agree with. Instead, I think art direction is where it's at, and Psychonauts has excellent art direction. So when I played this, Invader Zim was really popular, especially amongst self-proclaimed weird art kids like myself. Invader Zim has this crazy, dirty look to the environment and characters. Sometimes proportions are correct and more human, but a lot of the time they are over-exaggerated. Now, Psychonauts doesn't look gross, but the characters, my god, are sometimes exaggerated and disgusting. I think it's great. It's part of the reason I like this game and I will always hold a soft spot for it. Speaking of characters, there's a whole host of them here. The thing I find interesting, aside from the characters with levels dedicated to their brain, is that I don't remember any of the campers that make up the majority of the cast. I missed many of their cutscenes growing up since, like Raz, I was in a rush to get to the end. I like that fact though. Since the game takes place in one day, it is perfectly reasonable to not even try to interact with these campers as you're on a ticking clock. I mean, at the start of the game, Mia has already called your father to come pick you up. Since this is my 100% level 101 playthrough, I did my best to see and experience it all. You can miss these interactions between campers, and I think that's great because it feels natural to run into these guys playing out their own stories independent of you. Most of them, if you catch little cutscenes with them, go through significant character arcs, and that's pretty cool. Seeing as we don't spend a lot of time with them, and by the midway point they're all brainless. The cheer kids have this Kamiko die pack and have their brains stolen before they can carry it out. But by the time we restore their brains, they resolve to bring more cheer to the world.
OMG! I feel so stupid for throwing myself off the roof now!
What? Why'd you throw yourself off the roof?
Because the poison didn't work. Listen, I have to go. The world could use some major league cheering right about now.
Maloof stops being the victim and becomes the bully and gets really extreme with his resolution after getting his brain back.
Sounds like it's time something bad happened to to our fine coach.
Well, let me tell you what our plan is.
Please, you have your plan, I have mine. But say no more.
All the kids are great and have complete backstories not presented entirely in the game. Still, there is a deep dive into their psychology and backstories up on YouTube if you want to look into that. There are also these budding relationships that are classic summer romances. Summer romance is always intense and short. This takes me back to a few relationships I had as a kid, if you can call them that. Not to say these feelings, emotions, and tears weren't real. Still, as an adult now, I realize what defines a relationship for me. Oddly enough, I think I had my first hard love in middle school not long after this game. I was head over heels, and though I don't remember using the word love, I know exactly how I felt after it was all over. It was, at the time at least, the darkest thing I had felt. I was depressed and didn't even have a word for that. I felt so much, but I couldn't articulate any of that pain due to my inexperience with relationships and being so young. I didn't understand how someone I thought felt as strong as I did could just drop everything so suddenly. Though that was bad, I can finally understand why most adults don't take young people's relationships seriously. Those that have had healthy and unhealthy relationships know it takes a lot of communication and dedication. It's work, and being a young person, no matter how smart you are, it's hard to adequately express yourself on that level, let alone express those thoughts and emotions clearly. Throw puberty in the mix and it only ends with one or both parties being hurt. Without realizing it, I think this profoundly affected me and how I would treat and end relationships in the future. The way Lily and Raz interact demonstrates this perfectly. They clearly like each other but cannot voice or admit this honestly for most of the day. In fact, many camp relationships have this issue with communication, which makes sense since they're all like 10-year-old kids.
And so that's why, even though she is a girl, and we are good friends, she is not technically my girlfriend. Can't you just let it go?
How embarrassing.
When it comes to all-time favorites for me, Black Velvetopia is at the top. While the Milkman Conspiracy stands out for many people, it was this for me. This place oozes style, and everything about it is just so dope. Lucky for us all, I have something to say here. So this whole place is Edgar's heartbreak. We have this bull running through the streets, but those streets are built on top of a high school. I already touched on my middle school heartbreak, but let us revisit that for a second. So after my first heartbreak, I didn't get into it with another girl. I was still, like Edgar, very hung up on this girl. Also like Edgar, I'm sure I let it ruin my life. I'm sure there was a noticeable drop in grades which didn't fly with my parents. I don't think my noticeable drop in mood was ever addressed, but the tangible thing being my grades was. Effectively, I thought it was worth throwing it all away if I could just feel something again. Rent-free wasn't a term that had entered the collective consciousness yet, but I was down bad. After that, I didn't date much. I tried to garner attention, but it led to little in the way of actual relationships. I wanted that stuff because it seemed like something I was supposed to be doing. I think back on how stressed out I'd be and borderline miserable trying to keep up the relationship. Figuring out how to navigate the intricacies of another person while also going through puberty and emotions they don't understand. When that breakup finally happened, I'd feel unbelievable relief. I'd be a little down for sure, but it was lovely. I'm convinced that had I been left to my own devices without society telling me how young men should act and what they should want, I would not have dated until my early to mid-20s. I think expectations from society and my family were probably more damaging, forcing me into decisions I wasn't ready to make yet and not there to help me navigate and make sense of it all. I mean, growing up in a Southern black household, the question was always pushed and asked, when are you getting a girlfriend, or do you have a girlfriend? At the same time, this hyper-abstinent attitude discourages you from even being alone in the same room with the opposite sex, or talking to them expressing romantic interest. It's enough to make a young man go crazy. Hell, in all my years of living, I've only introduced 2 women to my immediate family. There's a thread there, I'm sure. Now I'm running through all my most recent breakups in my head. Well, let's take the Edgar approach to deal with these emotions.
There was a magic bullet. It was forged by Illuminati mystics to prevent us from learning the truth.
What can I say about the Milkman Conspiracy that hasn't already been said? This brain is the most well-known out of them all. Now, why do I care? Before my country's political climate went insane, I loved conspiracy theories. A few years ago, you can come here on YouTube and type in something in the search bar, say, Denver Airport. From there, you were whisked away, and the next thing I knew, it was morning, and the sun was coming up. Now, I was never a true believer, but I always found conspiracy theories fascinating. The unique threads drawn, the leaps in logic made. The good theories at least have a jumping off point rooted in reality. I mean, this was basically my midnight hobby for about 2 years. I was pretending to be the unlimited error version of the question. I could go on, but I just had to get off my chest. Plus, in Boyd's case, he was right all along. See? Rooted in reality.
And so, that brings us to the end, where, as you can clearly see, the personal demons causing my negative behavior have all been eradicated, leaving me sane once again.
This is it. The end. Though it may not be clear with how I've jumped around and whatnot, I went for the entire 101 run. I'm talking all baggage, figments, and challenge markers. This is important because I cheated back in the day, because, well, cheat codes are fun.
You cheated!
This level is a messed up entanglement of the coach and Raz's brain. More important though, they both have this common thread of domestic issues, specifically with their fathers. This is where I diverge because I have a good relationship with my father. I think. I mean, maybe like Raz and Oleander, I felt that my father wanted me to be someone else. By not being that person, I was letting him down. Deep down, he didn't like me. That would cause a small rift between us and lead to us never being as close to each other as we appeared to be. Maybe I had this idealized version of him in my head that I also had to kill to get past the negative feelings and be myself. I mean, it's all certainly possible. More than that though, I think this level is about forgiveness and healing. I can't change the things that I felt growing up or where my parents messed up. I can't forgive them and not let that stuff drag me down and make the same mistakes if and when I have children. Now, despite our differences and my struggles growing up, I was able to eventually be the version of myself that I wanted. I know now that our parents are all people who are going through and still fighting their own mental battles, so it's important that we forgive them. Barring some extreme circumstances like them killing all your pet rabbits. Forgiving them and getting back to that neutral common ground will give us the power to finish our healing. Once that's done, there's no stress on you and I can move on. It took a while, but I could forgive them and move on, and they really were proud of me the whole time. While writing this, I heard a bit from a song Freedom of Preach that hit differently. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. However, I like this variation from C.S. Lewis. When I became a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness and the desire to appear very grown up. Alright, it's awards time, and this first one should be of no surprise. Goated. This game is a cult classic now. Looking past that, there is a lot of fun mechanics and ideas that will always be worth revisiting. Levels and characters are certified classics. I didn't talk about the majority of this game, but if you have it, please go play this. For the second award, Insanity Collectibles. You don't see it in this video, but going for the collectibles in this game might drive you crazy, specifically the figments. Most of them you'll definitely get. Hell, in later levels, you can even get all of them in the first pass if you're thorough. My god though, some are in places that seem insane at times, especially if you thought you did a good job combing the level. I'm looking at you, Waterloo. Lastly, we have practical goggles. I know it's always been way cool to just throw goggles on your protagonist's head and never give him a second thought. However, here we go beyond cool factor and we have practical goggles.
Enough! Time for me to pluck out your eyes!
Ha! You can't. That is the purpose of the goggles.
See, no one can pluck out your eyes. It's small, but the kid in me has always appreciated this. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching. Tune in next time for more Hammy Down Gaming.
Soon they'll be dragging your ass out of here. Hey, are you awake? Did you hear that?